Welcome to The Tech Life with Rich Conte, bringing you stories from the front lines of the tech industry and the insider's perspective on starting, growing, or thriving in a technology venture.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Harbor Radio, brought to you by the Tech Life podcast and Silicon Harbor Magazine. I'm your host, Rich Conte. Each episode, we take you inside Charleston's rapidly growing tech and startup community and give a voice to the local entrepreneurs and other contributors driving that growth. One of my favorite aspects of hosting the podcast is getting the opportunity to circle back to guests and ventures that we've previously featured on the show. In November of 2016, we featured Levi Morehouse, the founder of Charleston-based Ceterus. Ceterus was finding its stride in transitioning from services provider to accounting technology solutions provider, and since then, they've experienced significant growth. I reconnected with Levi a few months back as he was gracious enough to help out as keynote speaker for Startup Weekend Charleston, and he introduced me to one of Ceterus' team members who is now playing a significant role as Ceterus' first product manager. Since product management is also part of my background, I thought it would be interesting to talk about our shared experiences and to also catch up on what Ceterus has been up to since we last spoke with Levi. Our guest on this episode of Silicon Harbor Radio, brought to you by the Tech Life podcast and Silicon Harbor Magazine, is James Vonderleith. James is product manager for Ceterus, small business accounting technology and services solution based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Well, welcome to the show, James.
Thanks for having me, Rich. It's good to be here.
James, for listeners that might not yet be familiar with Ceterus or missed our previous episode with founder Levi Morehouse, can you share a little about Ceterus and who your customers are?
So Ceterus exists to empower entrepreneurs. And right now we do that by providing small business owners all over the country with done-for-you accounting and benchmarked reporting. We strategically target niches, many of which are in the health and wellness industries.
How has Ceterus grown since Levi's interview about a year ago?
It's just been a wild ride. We've been growing at triple-digit sales growth. We raised another round of financing in the spring. We've taken over the second floor of our building on Meeting Street, and we've rolled out 3 new products to entrepreneurs and our internal staff. And we've actually automated 3.5 million transactions on that one product this year. So it's just been a crazy ride. It's been a lot of fun. Another couple initiatives that have been going on are that we acquired 2 different businesses. One, to make our internal tax team. We found that a lot of entrepreneurs were separating their bookkeeping from their CPA and their tax prep. And we wanted to just offer a one-stop solution and bring that in-house. And then we've also acquired another niche-focused accounting firm called Sandwich Math. And we're working on automating a lot of what they were doing and providing their customers with a really cool dashboard to go to.
If you had to single out one quality or one aspect of Ceterus' services or business model that differentiates you, what would it be?
So we're a solution, not a tool. There's a lot of accounting softwares that exist out there in the world that small business owners can use, but it takes a lot of accounting knowledge and a lot of time for them to use on their own. So we provide everything for them, and we also offer benchmarked reporting that no other accounting businesses can really offer small business owners.
Tell us about your role as product manager.
I like to think of my main objective is to build consensus across all the stakeholders in the company, whether we're talking about building features on our internal automation platform or whether we're talking about building new features for our customers. So what that means is I'm working with pretty much every single department and helping make sure features are prioritized right, designed, built, communicated, and ultimately rolled out to either our customers or our internal accountants.
What do you find most challenging and most rewarding about your role?
I love empowering entrepreneurs. They're the lifeblood of our economy, and we're providing them a solution that truly changes their lives, and it's very rewarding to work on a mission that big. As far as challenging, I've gone from a position of managing with authority to having to manage by influence. So no one reports to me directly, but I have to constantly be exerting my influence in a way without telling people what to do. But Rich, I'm curious about what your perspective is on product management. I know you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. And from what I know, product management can really differ across different companies. So I'd like to just kind of flip the script and get your thoughts on what you think the biggest challenges and rewards are in product management.
Turning the tables on the interviewer. Well, I've got a pretty varied background. I spent some time working in a UX capacity, both as an individual contributor, as a manager, sort of a self-taught engineer. So I have a little bit of a technical background. I've had a lot of experience interfacing directly with customers and with executives. And I look at my role in product management now as kind of a culmination of all of those various perspectives. So it's really rewarding from the standpoint of bringing together various threads of experience throughout my career. That's probably the most rewarding part. In terms of challenges, it's interesting. For me, it's a fun challenge. I don't look at it as something that is a negative aspect of the job. Matter of fact, this is something that I'm probably the most excited and enthused about in terms of the discipline of product management. And that is, what does product management look like as you start to scale an organization, and not just scale a portfolio through acquisitions or having a bunch of siloed products, but really scale to start solving bigger and bigger problems? There was a time where there wasn't a lot of standardized practices that described product management. And then you started to see things like pragmatic marketing and their framework appear. And it does a great job of laying the foundational building blocks for the discipline of product management and thinking about the full span of responsibilities that a product organization has. More recently, you've seen things like Marty Kagan. And for folks who are interested in product management, I highly recommend you read his book, Inspired. He talks about a way of thinking about product and thinking about product management that's a lot more consistent with some of the agile and lean methodologies that we're seeing in the industry now. But the big challenge for me that I see on the horizon is there's really a lot of undiscovered country around how some of these practices scale as you take on bigger and bigger problems. And so that's a problem we see manifested in my day-to-day job. And I spend a lot of time thinking about that challenge and what are some of the things an org can do to ensure that you strike that right balance between having a cohesive vision across the full scope of these large problems you're trying to solve, while effectively empowering the people that need to conceive of the solutions and then ultimately shepherd the delivery of them through the process. And that's a really tricky balance to find. And so that's something I find myself spending a lot of time thinking about lately.
That's really interesting. So how do you personally measure success in your role?
Traditionally, you want to think about measuring product managers in terms of the impact that they're making in their market, right? And typically that impact is measured in ROI, but it might not be, right, for a given organization in a given market. But it gets challenging when you start needing the type of vision and leadership and direction that a product manager provides in a scaled environment where you may be product manager for a set of services that aren't ultimately customer facing, right? Or might not be directly tied to some type of bottom line number that you can measure. And so then you have to get kind of creative and think about, well, wait, what are the objectives here and how do we measure it? But, high level for me, it's what is the impact that you're making on the market you serve, whether that's an external consumer market, whether that's a B2B market, or whether that's an internal market in your company. And then the other is some measure of kind of efficiency and the behavior of the team. I mean, ultimately, a product manager, more than anything, is a leader. And having the ability to kind of lead a group of people through an effort is one of the key aspects I think folks should be measured on.
I love that. So last question, Rich, what's the biggest advice you would give someone that's just starting out in product management or is trying to break in?
That's a great question. And it's going to be really challenging to whittle it down to one, because I think there are key things that are critical to the success of a product manager in terms of working with a technical team or valuing user experience, right? But probably the most important thing, and that everything else kind of derives from, is you find a domain or find a market that you're incredibly passionate about. Right? Because your ability to succeed is going to be largely driven by how close you are and how intimately you know that market or that domain. And it's really tough to get that close to a set of problems or a domain or a market unless you're really passionate about engaging it. You need to learn as much as there is possible and maintain that learning as your market or your domain evolves over time, and stay really close to it if you're able to provide the type of vision and the leadership that really, to me, is the hallmark of success in product management.
That's great advice. Thanks.
Now, James, you mentioned earlier that one of the most rewarding aspects of the job for you is the idea of empowering entrepreneurs. And I understand you've got a little bit of an entrepreneurial background yourself, even prior to working for Ceterus. So tell us a little bit about how starting and running your own business prepared you for your current role.
Great question. Yeah. So it really gave me broad experience in sales, marketing, consulting, basically having to be the one to do everything at the end of the day as a very small business. And it also made me realize how much I didn't know and how much I needed to learn from experts. But through that experience, I talked and consulted for over 100 small business owners. I really found out how to find product market fit and how painful it can be, but also how rewarding it can be once you find it.
Another interesting aspect about Ceterus is that you're building software not only for your customers to interact with, but also for an internal team that is serving those customers. And that's a little bit unique for a SaaS company. How has this affected your role as product manager?
Yeah, so it's constantly switching gears, putting yourselves in an accountant's shoes, and then switching gears to putting yourself in a customer's shoes. We've actually named our product suite a little bit better. So now we're thinking about all of the internal developments as edge automation, and everything that's going to the customers as edge entrepreneur. And honestly, to date, we've focused mostly on the automation software. So that's been the brunt of my job. The biggest challenge that we've had so far is just the volume of training and ongoing fixes and product support that we've needed for our internal users. And back in the summer, we hired a product support leader that's just done an amazing job, DeBose Griffin, and has really taken on that challenge. But for a while, it was just me doing all the product support and the product management and some jumping into QA once in a while. It was so much volume as we rolled this platform out to 70 users that we had to start hiring people. And now she has a team of 3 in product support.
Now, going back even further, you're a College of Charleston graduate. How did your experience there prepare you for your role and for a career in general?
Yeah, so going to College of Charleston ended up being the best decision I've ever made. Got into the economics program there, and there's some just great professors. Also in the Honors College, there's a lot of alumni that are connected through there, and I got my first job through the Honors College connection. There's always amazing speakers at College of Charleston. One of the underrated parts about CFC is that they bring in a lot of professors that just want to be in Charleston for the lifestyle, and also speakers that want to be there. So I get to listen to some amazing titans of industry through the time there. And really the biggest thing is when I went to start my business ClearDesk in Charleston, there's so many vacation rental and real estate companies, and that really provided me with a big jumping off point to serve those customers.
As a relatively recent graduate, what was it like to enter the workforce in a rapidly growing market like Charleston?
So when I graduated from CFC in 2013, there weren't too many smaller technology companies. I think the biggest one you would have ever heard of on the smaller side was Boomtown. And then, of course, Benefit Focus and Blackbot were always the big titans. But over the last few years, we've seen the smaller technology companies just sprouting up. It's really been neat to see the evolution of especially the North Morrison area where our office is, as well as listening to your podcast and seeing just all the amazing people that are flocking to Charleston. When I was graduating, a lot of my colleagues had to move out of Charleston. There weren't a ton of jobs in the economics, finance, tech industries, and so they'd move out, they'd go to a big city. And I just really loved Charleston, had good friends, wanted to stay. And so the way to do that was I started ClearDesk, focused on the real estate industry, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise when Ceterus came around and Levi kept calling me up, and honestly couldn't have been better timing having Ceterus get into the technology landscape and get some really good venture capital funding behind them right around the same time where I was kind of getting tired of doing my own thing and I wanted to have impact on entrepreneurs on a much larger level. And I feel like Levi has probably the biggest vision for how to do that in the whole country. And it's super exciting to be a part of.
Well, where can listeners go to learn more about Ceterus?
So Ceterus.com is a great starting off point. We actually have an entrepreneur center on there where we have interviews of different small business owners. And then also your episode with Levi from last year is a really good reference point.
James von der Lieth, Product Manager for Ceterus. Well, thank you for joining us on the show today, James.
Thanks, Rich.
I really enjoyed the opportunity to compare notes with James on product management and hope you enjoyed it as well. Ceterus is on the fast track to becoming the next big startup success story in Charleston. As James mentioned, their offices are located in the North Morrison area of Charleston, and they're a big part of the revitalization that part of the city has been experiencing. Head over to Ceterus.com to learn more about them. Our partners at Silicon Harbor Magazine are a great resource for keeping up with all of the events and news in the Charleston technology, creative, and entrepreneur community. Visit them at siliconharbormag.com and follow them on Twitter at SiliconHBRMAG. You can follow us at TechLifePod and also find us on Facebook. The best way to keep up with the show is to subscribe. For iTunes, visit www.siliconharborradio.com or search for Tech Life with Rich Conte or Silicon Harbor Radio. If you enjoyed the show, let us know by leaving us a rating and a review. Subscribing via RSS is as simple as visiting techlife.libsyn.RSS. The holidays are behind us, and we're looking to build off of the great momentum we built in 2017. If you have feedback or ideas for guests or topics, reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or by email at techlife@nofriction.co. The tech and entrepreneur community calendar is heating back up. 1 Million Cups is still going strong after their change in locale late last year. They're now hosting their weekly Wednesday morning events at the Schoolhouse in the Avondale section of West Ashley. Go to 1millioncups.com/Charleston for more information. Startup Grind Charleston just hosted their January event featuring Lee Diaz-Brown of Obviously Marketing at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center offices. Head over to startupgrind.com/Charleston to see what they have on tap for February and March. That's all the time we have on this episode of Silicon Harbor Radio, brought to you by the Tech Life Podcast and Silicon Harbor Magazine. I'm your host, Rich Conte, and thanks for listening.